Hello everyone, welcome back to another NBA season preview. I'm The Analyst. You can follow me on Twitter at TheAnalyst32. You can subscribe to this channel, The Analyst32, on YouTube, and you can also like this video if you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends. Who knows? So, going into this NBA preview video today, it is the Indiana Pacers. The one and only Indiana Pacers. They are coached by Frank Vogel. Let's jump right into it. This is a team that we were at one point expecting to be a contender for an NBA championship, pushing LeBron James and the Miami Heat to the very edge of their existence and possibly ruining their runs at their NBA championships that they managed to get. However, last year Paul George got injured, and they blew the team up. There's still a couple guys left. They added a couple of pieces, but we will get to that here right now. Let's look at the roster here. George Hill is starting at the 1. He averaged 16.1 points per game, about 5.1 assists, and 4.2 rebounds, and a steal last year in 43 games played. Just had about half the season, was injured for a lot of the first half of the season. We'll expect to see him play better for the Pacers this year in what is a weak Eastern Conference. At the 2, we have Monte Ellis coming in from Dallas. Kind of surprised to a certain extent. Dallas didn't try to keep him, but they added Wes Matthews. So Monte Ellis is now a Pacer, a guy who's a prolific scorer in this league. Expect him to be a guy who's averaging 15, 20 points a game, give or take. He will be a guy who takes a lot of shots, so we'll see how that affects George Hill. We'll see how that affects Paul George and, Joe Young and Rodney Stuckey coming off the bench, but we'll get that in a moment. At the 3, we have C.J. Miles, who averaged 13.5 points per game for the Pacers last season. Stepped up for this group, especially with how riddled with injuries they were. At the 4, a guy who was out all of last year except for about the last 10-15 games of the season, was limited on his minutes. It's Paul George, a guy who can be a superstar in this league. That being said, that horrific injury he had in the U.S. national team's scrimmage, where he snapped his leg there when coming down from a monster block or dunk, I believe. I forget which one it was. That was a major injury. Will we be able to see Paul George come back from that and be just as aggressive? So far in preseason, it has shown that he can. But over an 82-game regular season, we'll see how he works from there. Expect him to be anywhere between a 25 to 20 points per game scorer this season. He will be the main guy they go through. At the 5, replacing Roy Hibbert, is his backup from the past few years, Mahinmi. He averaged about 4.3 points per game. Maybe a little bit more, about 5.8 rebounds. Was a guy who could step in on defense for the Pacers and give close but not equal to what Roy Hibbert gave them as a big man in the middle. I expect him to make a bigger leap this year. You'll probably see him be in the 7 to 8 points per game range just because of the minutes he will be getting. But he is not going to be somebody you pick up for a fantasy team or anything like that. I guarantee it. But anyway, that's the starting 5. Let's take a look at the bench. Starting at my guy who would be your 6th man for this team right now. It's going to be Rodney Stuckey. This is a guy last year coming off the bench, averaged 12.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 3.1 assists. He's been in the league for a long time. He is really a veteran at this point. I don't know how much he adds on the defensive end for this team, but he is definitely a good scoring option off the bench. Another guy to look out for. Mr. Joseph Young out of the University of Oregon. This is a guy who can just light up the scoreboard. He's going to be a guy who could be averaging 10 points a game off the bench for the Pacers if he's given the time. Really should be given the time. He's shown a lot of glimpses here in preseason and during Summer League. So keep an eye on him. He might be a late bloomer this year in terms of a late fantasy pickup. If you also look here, we have Jordan Hill. Last year put up some good minutes for the Lakers while they played like trash. But that's not the point. The point is Jordan Hill was a guy who could be a double-double machine. So definitely look at picking him up. Also look at him to be a major contributor for the Pacers going forward, especially if Mahinmi doesn't give them what they want. Jordan Hill doesn't like playing center, but he is an option at center and can definitely come up with better points per game and rebounds than Mahinmi in the long run. Another guy you'll be seeing coming into the fold this year for the Pacers is Chase Budinger. The guy is a slasher, can really shoot the three. Hasn't been given a lot of time recently on other teams. He's a guy who really hasn't taken as much, really hasn't grasped his opportunities like he should. And, well, he's been stuck in Minnesota the past year or two, and without Kevin Love on the team, hasn't had a lot to play for. So we'll see how that goes for him now that he's with the Pacers. Looking at a few questions that I have for this team. Why are we playing Paul George at 4? He's a natural shooting guard / small forward, and now we're playing him at the power forward. Yes, we live in a day and age where we like to play small ball, and that means placing Paul George at the 4 and also making him a matchup that's difficult to play against on offense with anybody in your big man rotation to guard him. However, he is going to have issues on the other end guarding anyone from the likes of Dirk Nowitzki to, LaMarcus Aldridge at the position. He's just not going to have the height and strength to match up with those guys. Granted, he also plays in the East, so he may have an easier time than that, but against Western Conference foes, you're going to see him really struggle at the 4 position. Another question, will they look like Golden State did before Steph Curry and just let Monta Ellis shoot the ball up? I don't think so. But having a Monta Ellis on your team always has that little kind of itch in your head thinking that Monta Ellis is going to start being a ball hog and shooting all the time and wanting every shot on the floor, even though he has Paul George there. We'll have to see how that plays out. He had a good year in Dallas, played really well with Dirk Nowitzki. We'll see what he brings to the Pacers. And we will also have to figure out what the big man rotation is going to be for this roster. You have Jordan Hill, you have Paul George. Chase Budinger gives you some height as well. You could possibly fit him in as a stretch 4 with Paul George. You have Mahinmi. They might have to look into strengthening their post presence for this next year. So definitely take a look at that. Coming in for my expectation, my prediction for the Indiana Pacers, however, I see them being a 34-win team, 48 losses this season. The 34 wins isn't going to get you in the playoffs this year in the East. I don't think the Pacers have enough to be a playoff team this year, even with the likes of Paul George being back healthy. There's too many other teams that have been on the rise, and the Pacers are really missing one more piece. So, anyway, now that you've heard me ramble on about the Pacers, what are your thoughts? Give it a like. You can subscribe to my channel here, The Analyst 32. You can also follow me on Twitter at The Analyst 32 as well. So, thank you for watching, and we will see you in another NBA season preview.